Hello, dear listeners and dear watchers. Welcome to our second episode of Navigating the New Normal in the International Workplace with me, your host, co-host Michelle Clark Series, and my dear co-host Len Adams. Len, good evening.
Good evening. How are you?
I'm doing well. Now, the reason why I'm saying good evening is because we're actually doing a little departure here. We're actually taping in the evening because our honored guest is located in Japan. Kevin Naylor, Business Development Head at N-World. Kevin, welcome.
Thanks very much, Michelle and Len. Ohayo gozaimasu. That's good morning from Japan. It's 9 a.m. here on Thursday. So thanks for stretching your working day to accommodate me. That's something we're not really used to in Japan. Usually we have to operate on New York or London time. So thanks very much. It's great to be
We're
here.
both getting overtime tonight, so that's okay.
Yes, Kevin. And thank you so much for joining us. This is fantastic. I just want to clarify, you are Vice President of Business Development at N-World. And to that end, tell us about your role and what N-World does.
Okay, well, maybe I'll kick off with N-World. So N-World's not really very famous outside the borders of Japan. We're a Japan-based executive recruitment and human resources services firm. We were founded 21 years ago when really the recruitment market was just kind of getting started here in Japan. Basically started out with about 4 people working in our founder's apartment and grew from there. And now we've become one of the market leaders here in talent resourcing and retention solutions for global firms here in Japan. So that usually means foreign capital firms that have established businesses here in Japan, as well as Japanese firms that are seeking to grow their presence further overseas. We were acquired in 2010 by a listed Japanese company named N-Japan that's the leader here in the domestic market and focuses a lot on job boards and also other tech-related HR solutions. And we were acquired to be more of a high-touch recruitment solution and more of a global angle to that. So we're about 300 people here in Japan across 4 different business units, contingency recruitment, executive retained level recruitment, specialized contract solutions, and then recruitment process outsourcing. And we've got 3 offices here in Japan and people from more than 20 different countries. So we're pretty international here. Yeah, trying to serve the international community. Myself, I've been with the company for over 15 years. I started out just as a recruiter on the ground, trying to help accountants and finance people find jobs. And in the 15 years I've been doing this, I've done a little bit of everything in the company. And just in October, I started a new role as head of business development, looking to create synergy across our across all of our businesses, as well as to bring that a little bit more broadly, which is kind of what brought me here today. We are part of the Alliance partnership with Future Manager Alliance. I think your first session was with the Honorable Mr. Salvatore Corradi. And so that's how I got introduced to this. So I'm happy to be talking with you today. Originally, as well, I'm from the US. I've been in Japan for nearly 24 years.
Wow. That's fantastic. That's fantastic.
Sorry, that's a lot.
No, this is great. The fact that you're in Japan and that we're in the US is phenomenal. Len, you want to take the next question?
Sure. So as you mentioned, we're both part of FMA with Mr. Karate. At ACG, we tend to focus on a number of different verticals. We're in financial services, insurance, food, luxury items, B2B and C2B, B2B and B2C goods, and a host of other areas. So we're doing some pharmaceuticals and whatnot. What areas do you find growing in N-World?
Okay, it's a good question. I mean, when we started out, we started actually, the firm that was founded was called Wall Street Associates. So we're firmly focused on financial services back in the day. But since the financial crisis, that's tended to dwindle while other areas have grown. So we're pretty much full coverage across all sectors. So we do, life sciences, technology, B2B, B2C, financial services. However, in recent years, we've really seen in Japan, because of the aging population, life sciences really grow. There's always a lot of activity in that area anyway, with acquisitions, divestitures. Also technology, but that's been kind of a mix of winners and losers, as hardware's been left behind for people focusing more on cloud-based solutions and applications. So those have probably been the two strongest growth areas across the market the last couple of years. And I think also through the COVID-19 crisis, those have also proved a little bit stronger, with also some particular strength among certain retail firms that have, established a platform so that they can get their goods and services out to people, despite the fact that they're, sheltering at home or whatever. So the companies that have really made a good digital transition over the last years and set themselves up for success are also doing quite well and keeping us busy.
Well, you mentioned the new world that we're in, and we're all facing it, and especially the last 7 months. I could tell you from our viewpoint here at ACG and as part of FMA, in New York, which has been hit really badly over the last 6-7 months, we've had to certainly adapt. Now, for my firm personally, we've been virtual anyway for many years, so it didn't affect us on that level. It has affected us in terms of our interactions with our clients and our candidates, and with placing people, because a lot of people are now working from home. So how has this affected you in Japan?
Yeah, it's a really good question. It's been quite a ride. I think for better or for worse, we're kind of fortunate because I don't know if you all remember, but back in 2011 we had the big earthquake and tsunami that hit the eastern part of Japan, and that really crippled business and the economy for quite a while. So we had to shift instantaneously to working remotely to protect our people. And just keep things going. So we had a bit of a drill, several years ago.
Okay.
And we were in the process of moving to a more flexible working environment anyway. I mean, we're a reasonably big company for a recruitment firm at 300. So, keeping track of that many people, what they're doing every day and how they're, managing their work is easy. But we decided, you've got to give them freedom and, give them responsibility. So we were in the process of getting everybody really mobile in terms of the enabling technology and moving towards a more flexible employment system. Japan tends to be quite rigid in that respect. I guess, people tend to go in early, work late, stay in the office. And so we were trying to buck that trend and give people more of a work from anywhere sort of situation, and as opposed to a daily, but more of a daily hourly work schedule, more of a monthly kind of assemble your hours as needed. This was primarily driven by us trying to improve our inclusion from a few years ago anyway. We got a good diversity ratio, but in senior management, we still struggle with inclusion a little bit. So we were headed in that direction anyway. So this just gave us a little kick in the backside to speed that up. And it's been good. I mean, again, there are challenges with keeping people engaged, and especially with onboarding and engaging new members, like under COVID-19. But internally, it's gone relatively well. I think to your point, Len, we really see this, and I see this with my clients as well, the engagement piece. I mentioned engagement for internally, but with not knowing if people are working from home, if they're in the office, I think the people, our recruiters that have built good relationships over the years have been able to, parlay that into, deeper relationships and really trying to add value even when people are not hiring staff. But people that are new to the game and just trying to generate new business struggle.
It's difficult. I'm finding people more available to speak than ever before, right? They seem more open to having conversations, maybe because they're sitting at home.
Yep, we've found that as well, especially with senior people. We weren't hit as hard as a lot of countries. There's still a lot of theories, whether it's because Japanese, it's very homogeneous here, so everybody wears masks, and there's been no fighting
Right.
about that, and we've had a really low mortality rate. So we never really locked down hard, and it's been opening up more. So I've had a lot more requests from clients to come out, meet over lunch. I think people are a little bit lonely, and they
Wow.
want to talk to humans about what's going on and what they should be doing.
Yeah,
A business
loneliness.
lunch. I don't know what that is anymore.
Well, loneliness is a big issue in countries, especially in Japan. But Kevin, let me ask you a question. You said you've been in Japan for about 24 years, right? Well, what's it like being an American? How has that shaped your experience in Japan?
I think probably as a first step, rather than as an American, as being a non-Japanese is really the first thing, because it's like I mentioned before, it's so homogeneous here. Like 95, 96% of the population's native Japanese, and the remainder of that is mostly, Korean or Chinese. So, somebody like me sticks out a little bit, whether you're American or British or whatever. So, and that there are positives and negatives to that, right?
Right.
So I think just being able to accept that people don't understand you and may approach you with a bit of, trepidation, especially
Hmm.
not knowing if they're going to be able to communicate with you. So being able to take that as an opportunity, a natural differentiator, right? In business, you have to differentiate to get different opportunities. So I
Sure.
think that's probably the first thing. And as an American, probably, we come from a melting pot, right?
Mhm.
So if you're going to have good relationships, you have to try and put yourself in the other person's shoes, listen and learn a little bit before making assumptions. And so I think that's kind of helped me both in adapting in Japan, not just making stereotypes and assumptions about the Japanese. And it's also helped me in my business. So I think more as an American, as I've been here a longer time, I've gotten involved in the American Chamber of Commerce in Japan.
Okay.
So we're very active about promoting networking, community advocacy here for the foreign business community, and trying to bring the positive American values that we can to share with our hosts here in Japan, and create better business and better relationships that way.
So you're fluent in Japanese, correct?
Well, I think I'll probably put fluent in quotation marks. I was just having this discussion with a lady yesterday, and
Uh-huh.
you know, even the best non-native speakers of Japanese, it's just almost impossible to ever get there. But
Right.
yeah, I get by pretty well. So I can. I had to report to the president of our parent company, who's was our chairman for about 6 months directly, and he speaks hardly a lick of English. So yeah, I get by pretty well. I don't have to use it in business that much, but
Uh-huh.
just kind of going back to building bridges for the Japanese, if you try a little bit and understand a little bit, it goes a long way, because they study English for like 7 years. They just it's like an engineer that learns how to design the perfect bicycle, but then never really gets a chance to ride it.
Oh, right. So,
So
so you speak and write it and read it.
well, I mean, nobody writes anything anymore, right? They just type it and text it. So yeah, I speak a lot better than I write, just because I've learned a lot through absorption here. But so yeah, reading a contractual document or a difficult newspaper is a bit of a challenge for me, but I can get by.
Wow. Wow, that's amazing. So let's talk about N-World and N-World's relationship with its clients in this case, right? The foreign companies that are establishing themselves in Japan. How has N-World helped these companies adapt appropriately, right?
So you mean particularly under this new normal condition?
Yes, yes, absolutely.
So I think kind of going back to what we are talking about earlier, we through this time we've kind of taken a policy of intentional engagement.
Right.
So there are a lot of companies that their first you know the first thing they need to deal with is crisis management, not hiring new staff. And a lot of them, especially since their top line's been cut, they have to look at costs so they can keep the boat afloat. So first thing they don't want to hear is somebody calling up and say, hi, do you want to pay me a pretty big fee to hire some new staff? When really they probably have to decide who they can keep and not.
Right.
So we've been spending a lot of time just trying to bring, two people that are isolated, kind of to what Len was speaking about earlier, trying to bring them information from the market. Okay, what are other people doing? How are they adapting to the new normal? Okay, what are the movements in the labor market like? As time shifts, people get used to it, and we're slowly seeing more hiring happening. And we've been, especially over the last 4 or 5 years, this also referenced the aging population situation, in a huge talent deficit here in Japan. And it's been really, really tough for a lot of firms to recruit the people they need.
Wow.
So they're not in a situation where they can recruit really aggressively right now. But when this turns back on, they also don't want to be kind of behind the 8 ball and trying to catch up. So just sharing a lot of information and trying to understand what their needs are and being ready to be there for when they're, when they need to move business forward and start to recruit talent.
How about the pay gap? There's a pay gap between men and women. How does N-World deal with these issues that happen internally in the country? How do you maneuver yourself?
Well, I think in reference, I mentioned earlier about us kind of taking on the challenge of our inclusion situation. So, I feel like before we can, be too assertive with our clients, we have to get our own house in order. So I think part of that's been a real focus. Again, we've always had a really good balance of male-female employment, but retaining talented female staff and getting them to that management level, especially when and this happens everywhere in the world, the decision to have a family starts to become a challenge. So, moving to a more flexible system so that they can, retain that value-added job as a consultant and salesperson, and then potentially a manager in the future, as opposed to having to opt for, a less challenging job, has been the main thing we've been trying to do here. Then shifting that to the external market and our clients, Japan has a higher female participation rate in the workforce than even the US does. However, what's hiding behind those figures is that a lot of these women have to make a choice when they have a family to, step out of the workforce for a while. And then when they get back in, largely they end up in kind of, I guess, underemployed is the best term, working part-time jobs for minimum type wage in the service sector. And that's kind of covered over. So, really what we tried to do, especially through our contract staffing arm, is to get these ladies opportunities to get back into career track jobs in the workforce, so that they can compete for those higher paying jobs. And then again, just sharing information about best practices. There are a lot of US companies operating here that they're not allowed to discriminate, and they need to be pushing for more women in senior positions and more women in the boardroom. But the pushes from overseas, it takes longer for those things to take root here in Japan. The speed of change is always slow, so really it's talking people through that and helping them understand the benefits. We put on seminars sometimes along with our clients, talking about their diversity and inclusion challenges, and how they're working to solve them. So really trying to keep that dialogue open, sharing information, and helping people understand why it's good for their companies to get more women into leadership positions, and not just doing it to hit a number or something like that.
Sure. I would imagine, as an American, you may have heard, we have a small news story that's been going on here in the US. There's been an election, in case you haven't heard about it.
I hadn't noticed that.
I
hadn't noticed. Yeah, we were. I had a few calls yesterday. I was working from home like I am today, and with a few fellow Americans over here. And I think the concentration factor was a little bit low work yesterday.
Oh boy. I'm grateful for the end of the political commercials now, at least for a while. But I was going to ask you how you thought the results would be affecting your clients, but we don't have any yet. But given it goes one way or the other, what do you see after we finally get a result on either side?
Yeah, well, I think honestly speaking, like I mentioned, things change slowly here. So yeah, the government will definitely be on a wait and see sort of mode, and I think corporations, especially large Japanese corporations that comprise the bulk of the market, will be the same. I think the biggest danger is kind of that protracted and messy, contended election situation. And that's not just for Japan, that'll be for the rest of the world as it starts to mess with stock markets and companies' abilities to just look forward to something predictable and then adjust their business accordingly. So I think we've had to deal with too much uncertainty with when's COVID going to end, how's it going to end. So this just adds insult to injury. So the biggest thing I'm hoping for is just whoever ends up losing can accept that graciously and get on with some kind of a healing and a bridge building process. So the whole world can get on with it, because the world sets its watch by the U.S. So the more mess that we've got back at home, the more that affects everybody economically and emotionally and everything else. So that's kind of what I can see anyway. So hopefully we'll get it settled pretty quickly and we can move forward.
Yeah,
Yes,
hopefully,
agreed.
for sure. I think so. I mean, we're doing well on time. So I thought I'd ask a question in terms of what are you telling your clients, your job applicants, on the best steps to take when interviewing? What is Enroll suggesting to applicants?
It's a really good question. I think it's still probably 80%, probably 90% of the people that we find jobs for are native Japanese speakers who are bilingual and bicultural. It's still, again, Japan struggles to, well, part of its immigration. There's been a lot of immigration reform in the last few years, but still there's not a huge pipeline of foreign white collar workers coming into the country because the language is still a barrier. So again, we're still dealing primarily with bilingual, bicultural Japanese looking for jobs at foreign companies or Japanese companies looking for bilingual talent. So, the biggest thing is getting them to take kind of a conscious approach, not just a defensive approach to the interview. Say, look, this interview is not just to get a job, but this interview is for you to understand if that's going to be a good fit for you and a good match for your career. So, like, one of the simplest things I tell my people is to, make a list of 10, 15, 20 questions that you need to have resolved in that interview to know if you want to move on to that next step. And hopefully the client's going to answer them for you anyway, but be on the offensive, not the defensive, because I think compared to in the Western world, we're kind of released into the world at 18 years old or maybe even earlier in some cases, and we've got to figure out what we want to do, and we have to learn to market ourselves and find the right niche for ourselves. And that's not something that's common in Japan. As people graduate from university, they interview for big companies, in group interviews, and they get jobs and their careers kind of managed for them. So just kind of switching that mindset and kind of being able to participate in the conversation as opposed to just waiting to have fastballs thrown at you that you can't hit.
I see. So it's sort of getting prepared from a interpersonal perspective.
Yeah, more so. I mean, I think on a skills basis, that's not something that you can lick in an interview. That's a longer term situation. And we do have, it's not only a demographic issue with not enough people here, but there's definitely a skill gap that we're working through. I think the Japanese Ministry of Labor reported even just a couple of years ago that we were minus about 150,000 IT engineers in Japan that we need to really keep up with the world. But the universities aren't really producing this talent in volume coming out of university, because traditionally people move into Japanese companies and get their education on the job. And Japanese companies in large part have not been on the cutting edge of that technology that's being driven out of Silicon Valley. So we've got a gap there that we're really trying to catch up on right now. But you're not going to send somebody to school overnight and have them become a cutting edge computer programmer. So
Right. Wow.
That's interesting.
It is very interesting.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
Well, the fact that there's so many people here looking for jobs particularly in tech, right? That just gets
Maybe
my
we can
mind.
export them.
I think that's Kevin, I think that's a good idea. Coupled with the fact that Japan is having a real issue with its aging population that's also declining.
Yep.
There are definitely opportunities there, that I see at least. Where does NWorld see itself in a few years' time?
Well, I think it's a pretty big question, but I think I've been doing recruitment for 15 years, so I'm not exactly the most senior and experienced guy out there, but it's we really try to keep plugged into what's going on globally, and technology is affecting recruitment just like it's affecting every other business out there. And I think we're in kind of a critical place in this, in that the greatest value that a good recruitment consultant can add is in those unstructured problems, like matching people to people, like deeply understanding not only what a company says they want, but really trying to understand what they need to stay competitive. Sometimes that they might need something that they don't even know about. So really being able to communicate with a customer to understand that, and then try to propose different solutions. And that's something that technology cannot bridge. But I think a lot of recruiters refuse to embrace the fact that technology's really edging in on that. So I think really what we're trying to do is work closely with our parent company and see what's going on globally to incorporate technology solutions that allow us to create more time for us to spend doing the things that only humans can do. And I think really that's the way of the world in a lot of industries. So we'll do that. And then, we're focused primarily in Japan. We do have offices in India, Thailand, and Vietnam. But leveraging also this relationship with Future Manager Alliance to, start to, try to export our particular brand of recruitment overseas. So the focus more on the long-term result of introducing people to companies and to new careers, as opposed to just placing people in. So we have a theme that runs through our group. It's called, in Japanese, Nyushigo Katsuyaku. It translates loosely to success after joining, but that's really clunky in English. So we just say enabling success. So really what we're looking to do is make matches and then even add some value through services after we place people to make sure that they stick and that they do well and that they add value for their company. And I think those are the things that a really good hands-on recruiter can do, as opposed to just sticking people in a job and hoping they do okay. So we really want to stick to those traditional values, but use technology to be able to do it better and more efficiently.
I see. So being traditionally modern.
I guess something like that. So there you go.
Well, this is fantastic. Len, when was the last time you went to Japan?
Never. Never been there. Maybe one day when COVID's over and we can get on a plane again.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, no kidding. That's something that we're all waiting for. But
yes, for sure.
Absolutely.
I think one of the great things about this, though, is as people adjust to this new normal, it's the barrier to just giving somebody a call by video on the other side of the world and doing something like a podcast like this on the other side. I think that barrier is a little bit lower. So,
yes.
it's not yeah, it's not a substitute for a good old fashioned business lunch or, going out for a beer together or something like that. But, you got to take what's been dealt and try to make the best of it. So I'm really pleased to have this opportunity to speak on the podcast and get to know you guys this way.
Absolutely.
Next week would traditionally be our FMA global meeting in Milan, which unfortunately is not happening this year. So that's one of the downfalls to COVID. One of the many downfalls to COVID.
Yeah.
I can imagine.
Yeah.
Kevin, my family and I, we actually love Japanese food. So my question just came to mind. What is your favorite Japanese meal?
Oh, that's a tough one. But I mean, everybody, the default answer is sushi. And until you've had sushi in Japan, especially here in Tokyo, I mean, it doesn't even compare. Like I can hardly eat it when I go to the States because it's just so fresh here.
I can imagine.
But I mean, there's so much great food. Tokyo actually has more Michelin starred restaurants than any other city in the world.
More than France?
Yeah.
I did not know that.
I didn't know that.
Yep. Tokyo's is probably the best city in the world to eat in. So, and that's not only Japanese food. You can have, top level, French, Italian, anything. So we're really, really blessed here. Although, under the current circumstances, sometimes you have to get it delivered instead of going out for it. But so yeah, I guess I have to go back and say probably really good. They say otoro sushi, which is like the really fatty tuna belly that's almost like eating steak. So.
Oh, nice. Oh my goodness, I'm getting hungry just talking about it. Kevin, thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy schedule in the future, because technically it's tomorrow over there.
Yeah, you guys are in the past.
Did you get any results?
I haven't seen anything that you haven't seen yet. Okay. I don't think so.
I thought maybe you have something.
If I get that, or if I get any of the results on Thursday Night Football or something, I'll send them over to you. But
please.
I thought maybe you could tell us who won the election.
I think we're going to need a farther futurometer on that than just 1 or 2 days. So
time machine, maybe.
Well, you know what, Kevin? Judging by your window, I'm going to say the future is bright. So
we got to make it that way. So
we got to make it bright. Well, this is such a pleasure. Thank you for taking the time out, Kevin. Len, thank you for being such a gracious co-host. It's such a pleasure.
My pleasure.
I look forward to meeting you in person, Kevin.
I hope so. Let's just hope and pray we can get through this COVID thing so we can keep the airlines busy and do some face-to-face catch-ups at some point as well. I really appreciate you taking the time and hosting me here. So thanks very much.
It's my pleasure. Don't go just yet. I'm going to stop recording. Thank you, dear listeners. Thank you, dear viewers, for another episode of Navigating the New Normal in the International Workplace. Next episode, we're headed to Germany, right?
Yes.
Perfect.
Jawohl.
Okay, 1 second, Kevin. Don't move.